Going beyond the headlines to the deeper issues. 96.3 WHUR and HUR Voices, Sirius XM Channel 141. This is the Inside segment where your questions and comments matter at 202-319-7810. Join the conversation.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR 96.3 HD2 and Sirius XM Channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. No matter who you voted for, the 2024 election season was an emotional roller coaster for supporters of Kamala Harris. It's a ride they want to get off. Harris acknowledged the pain of her supporters when she conceded the race on Tuesday.
To the young people who are watching, it is okay to feel sad and disappointed, but please know it's going to be okay. On the campaign, I would often say, when we fight, we win. But here's the thing. Sometimes the fight takes a while. That doesn't mean we won't win.
It's no secret that losing, quite frankly, sucks. And watching your candidate take an L is a huge letdown. So how do you cope when you feel your hopes and dreams have been dashed? Our guest is Dr. Nicole Cutts, clinical psychologist and certified executive coach. Dr. Cutts, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, so let me ask you this. How are people doing right now who have supported Kamala Harris? I can say anecdotally, when I'm looking on social media, and indeed, talking to some of my sister friends and some of the guy friends as well, some of them are just not happy, and some of them are also feeling, downright depressed. What's been your experience?
Yeah, a lot of people are feeling down. A lot of people are feeling disappointed, in the results of this election. And, but I also think that a lot of people are in some ways are happy that at least the decision has been made and, we can kind of get on with whatever we're going to do next. But yeah, a lot of people are definitely feeling disappointed and down after all of the stress of the election.
Yeah. The American Psychological Association says political anxiety is a source of chronic stress. But it differs from psychological conditions such as general anxiety. It's unique in its impact on emotional well-being and societal cohesion. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that politics are just one source of stress that we have. But yes, it does differ from a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. But if you're already feeling anxiety or if you're already dealing with an anxiety disorder, political stress can certainly add to that anxiety as well as to the depression.
Yeah. Tuesday was a very emotional day for a lot of people, those supporters of Kamala Harris, certainly. The hopes of shattering the glass ceiling, that didn't happen for her and her supporters. And there are some people, obviously, who feel a little down, but then others literally feel defeated, deflated. I've heard some people talk about, well, I'm just not ever going to vote again. Talk about that as a reality.
Well, I think that might be some folks' initial reality. We don't know if that's really how they're going to feel in the long run. A part of losing, anytime there's loss, there's also grief, So some people's reactions are going to be different. Some people, depending on what your reaction to grief is, might be anger. It might be sadness. It might be depression. So, yeah, I'm sure there's some people who are very angry. That makes sense as well when we don't get what we are hoping for and we're disappointed. And, it's hard. When we look at the history of this country, you talk about shattering the glass ceiling. We were hoping, I think, a lot of us, that America was in a different place. And so it's very disappointing, for a lot of people. But I don't think we should give up hope, while that might be our initial reaction. And I think it's important to grieve. I think it's important, if you're angry, to be angry, but then to focus on what it is you can do next and not give up hope and not become despondent.
That's interesting. Yeah. So you're suggesting, yes, you can feel it, but don't let it out in a destructive or self-destructive way.
Certainly, yeah. You don't want to do that. You want to feel your emotions. You want to let them go through you. You want to get them out. If you need to rant, you need to rave. But certainly, you don't want to turn it against yourself or against other people.
So, how do people really deal specifically with these feelings of defeat? I mean, that's obviously they're on both sides. On the Republican sides, on the Democratic sides, there were levels of high anticipation, and it's almost like a horse race. You just don't know who the winner might be until it's over. There's literally, continuing with my horse racing analogy, the jockeying for position. Sometimes one horse is up and then it falls back as it goes around the track all night. But for some people, like, for example, those of us in the news business, I would say there is a great deal of excitement because we cover these things.
Right.
And so reporting on the minute by minute, there is a bit of an adrenaline rush. But then there are other people for whom this is not a game. This is life for them. Right. That there is no adrenaline. There is only anxiety. So what do you tell your clients about how to address this?
Well, as reality would have it, I was speaking to a client today who was feeling very disappointed, and, it reminded her of disappointments in her own life, and I think we can all relate to being disappointed. And again, I think that it's important not to stuff the feelings or push them away. Like, it's okay to feel your feeling. It's healthy to feel your feelings, but then decide what you're going to do next. You might need to take a break. You might need to take care of yourself. What can you do? Do some exercise. Journal your feelings out. Do something healthy. Take a walk. It's beautiful out right now, with the fall colors. Get outside, take a walk, and take it easy on yourself. Have some compassion as you go through whatever grieving process that you have to go through. And then after you get that time and get some rest, hopefully you'll have a more clear perspective, and you can, focus on what you want to do next and what you can do next. It can also help to think about what you're grateful for. Make a gratitude list. Get your brain going in a positive direction. But again, I think it's important to go ahead and let yourself feel what you feel and then move on, not try to skip over however it is that you're feeling.
Obviously, that is a little easier said than done. Some may argue, because in the wake of the election, you could be a federal government worker. And so now you don't know whether or not after Inauguration Day or in the weeks after Inauguration Day, whether or not you're going to have a job. You may be of Latino descent. You could you could be an immigrant, and you could be perhaps documented. You may have family here that are not, and then you may be worried about what may happen to them. And so that's some long-term worry right now. I mean, we're talking, that's a good almost 3 months of concern.
Well, worry is a natural thing. It happens, but it can also be a corrosive and a destructive thing, right? So, I also worked with an organization and I work with a lot of federal government clients, and just went through working with them to talk about what could happen in a change of administration. They knew there was going to be a change, right? And there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of worry. And that's because of the uncertainty and because of what we've heard. We know what Trump has talked about wanting to do, wanting to reduce the federal workforce, wanting to deport people. So it's understandable, but you also can't let anxiety and worry about things that have not happened yet stop you from functioning today, right? So you don't want to live in the wreckage of the future, as some people might say. It doesn't mean you don't prepare. It doesn't mean you don't think about it. But if you dwell in it, then your anxiety will skyrocket and you will be exhausted by that and you won't be able to think clearly. So it's, as much as you can, you want to stay where you are now. You want to try to, I tell people, be where your feet are. It doesn't mean don't plan for the future, but you don't want to live in that place. You want to not engage in too much anxiety and worry.
Yeah. There's so many questions that I have about this, Dr. Cutts, and I really want to do some deeper drilling down, including on the other side, I want to talk to you about the stages of grief and whether or not this is like that. So please stay with us. We are going to take a break, but don't forget you can hear this in every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next. That's on WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. This conversation continues on Sirius XM Channel 141 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our discussion about how supporters of Vice President Kamala Harris can deal with the severe emotional letdown after she lost the presidential election on Tuesday. Dr. Nicole Cutts, clinical psychologist, joins us for this conversation. Dr. Cutts, I want to go back to what I was saying before the break, and that was, is this like those stages of grief? Anger, disbelief, denial, don't let me tell you your job, but...
Yes, it is like those Elizabeth Kubler-Ross stages of grief. And, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I was talking about working with an organization because they wanted to talk about preparing themselves for the change in administration and what changes might take place. So, there's a similarity between those stages of grief that you're talking about. And in organizational psychology, we also talk about the curve of change in an organization. And the stages are very similar, and it all has to do with, as you're saying, grief. And anytime there's a change, there is also loss, and when there's loss, then there's grief. And what you were talking about with the Kubler-Ross stages of grief, anger, shock, denial, and then depression, and then eventually acceptance. So yes, it is very much like that. And not everybody goes through all of the stages of grief, and they don't go through them in the same way, but there is definitely some similarity, like you were talking about, people feeling angry, people feeling depressed, people in disbelief. But because it is a stage model, you do move through those stages if you can, go through it healthily, which is why I suggested go ahead and feel your feelings so that you can move on to the next stage. And even if you're down for a little while, then you are going to come back up eventually.
We all remember with the 2020 election, there were all kinds of accusations of cheating and fraud and that kind of thing. A lot of people were very upset. This year, a lot of people are upset, but the accusations of cheating, fraud, et cetera, haven't heard a whole lot about that. Are we talking about the difference between those who lost in 2020 and the folks who lost this year? Are they sore losers, or is there something else going on here?
That's a difficult question to answer. Obviously, I have my opinions, but I don't really feel that I would be, equipped to say, oh, this is why the reaction is different. I do tend to think that if you're looking at the different political ideology, it's really not different political ideologies. Let's be honest. It was Trump supporters versus other people.
Yeah.
It's not Republican, Democrat. It is, that. I do think that, the folks that are supported Kamala tend to be more like we accept the results. And also because Kamala is not crying, cheating. She's not saying there's been cheating. That was Trump who said that, and his followers, followed suit, of course. But she's not saying that because I don't think that she believes that, and we know that also was not going on in 2020. So I think that there's a different personality in a way in terms of the followers of the two candidates that we just ran.
Well, here's the other thing, and this could be happening now or this week. This could also happen at the Thanksgiving table. How do you handle the winners boasting and bragging and not, when you're not really ready to not really ready to deal with your own grief? That this could look like Miss Seeley and Mr. at the Thanksgiving table for the color purple. Did I ever ask you for anything?
I didn't ask you. I can see it now.
No, I don't want to see that now.
Right.
Look, we need a little levity right now, considering the way people.
We do. Laughter is good.
Oh my gracious! Oh my goodness! I can see Danny Glover's face now. Anyway,
oh my God.
Yeah. So, whether it's happening now or at the Thanksgiving table or any time in between, if you were on the losing team and someone who was on the winning team decides to throw it in your face, for lack of a better term, how do you address that? Because, and I'm talking about from the losing side. I'm sure you can advise people, don't do that. But to the
certainly,
winner,
certainly don't do that.
Yeah.
But if you're on the losing side, it's about self-management. It's about self-awareness and self-management. It's emotional intelligence. It's, knowing what you can take and what you can't take, and also knowing how to manage how you feel. If somebody does that, then I would recommend, and different people are going to say different things. I would recommend don't take it personally. Try to center yourself and just say, listen, that what they're doing or what they're saying really doesn't have anything to do with me, so I'm not going to take it personally and let it upset me to that level. You might have to set a boundary. You might have to say, hey, let's not talk about this right now, because that you're going to get upset. But, definitely, I would not recommend that you break out into any of the scenes from Color Purple
right
at the dinner table or in the juke joint.
That's right.
Don't use that as your family playbook.
Yeah, or shaving on the front porch.
Right. None of those.
No, we don't want any of that.
It's not worth it. It's definitely not worth it.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it. You're right. It isn't worth it, and I would imagine, for those who are happy with the results, that they should treat people that they know who are on the losing side with grace and kindness. But
yeah, we would hope. Yeah,
we would hope. But am I asking too much?
No, certainly not. I mean, if you've gotten what you want and you've won, then that you should be a gracious winner. And if you've lost, then you should be a gracious loser. I mean, I think we can all agree on that. There's no point in goading your family members or poking them and trying to make them angry or gloating. We know that it's not a good idea to discuss things like politics and religion at the dinner table, and especially at a time like this. So, it's just not a good idea.
Does commiseration help? If you are talking with your circle of friends, all of whom have the same political beliefs and desires, and if you're sitting around, I mean, does it help to call the friend who feels the same way as you do?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I wasn't clear at first what you were talking about. Yeah, I absolutely think that helps, to call like-minded people and to check on each other and to commiserate. I mean, that's a part of feeling your feelings. That is a part of processing your feelings. And as a human, we're social animals. It's important that we get around each other and we talk about how we feel. Now, is it a good idea to call your friends and, keep focusing on the negative? No. But I do think it's a good idea to call and say, how are you feeling? Yeah, I'm feeling down. How are you feeling? I'm feeling bummed. Boy, talk about it for a while and then hopefully get each other, to a different place. But again, I think it's important to feel those feelings. So, there is such a thing as being toxically positive, where you might not want to allow people to feel how they're feeling. They might say, I'm feeling down. Oh, well, you got to look on the bright side. No, let folks feel what they're feeling, and then eventually, we can move to the next stage of however it is that we're feeling.
So that's how we're dealing within our own homes. But what if there is a feeling of a workplace energy change, particularly if you are working for the federal government, and depending on where you're working, this is Sam Cooke saying the change is going to come. There's no question about that. There are going to be people who are definitely moving out. The at will employees, I should say, are going to be moving out. How do you prepare yourself emotionally for those kind of workplace changes?
Well, what you do is you want to think ahead about what is it that I am losing, right? What am I afraid of losing? And then talk about what you can do about it. Right. So as I mentioned, I just went through this with an organization. I mean, this is looking at managing the human side of change. This is how any change should be done, is to think about, what is it that is changing, right? What is it that I am losing in relationship to this change? How can I prepare for that? How can I replace that, right? What is it I can do about it? But you also want to look at what could possibly be in it for you, right? Because as human beings, our minds have a bias toward negativity. So as soon as we imagine something changing, we see it in a negative way, right? So it's also important to think, well, what possible opportunities are there, right? So maybe I go and do something else. Maybe I do a job or open a business that I've always wanted to open. Maybe I am not having the same relationship with these coworkers, but who knows, I might get other coworkers that I love. So to look at what it is that's changing, look at what it is that you're losing. What can you do about what it is that you're losing? What might you need to do to prepare? But also try to look at any possible opportunities that might be involved in the change for you as well.
So this is the kind of thing that I'm about to share with you that we really want to avoid. And we kind of touched on addressing this issue with grace, no matter what side you're on. But this story is coming out of Miami right now. It's a case of election frustration boiling over. This happened last night, where three women were shot after a political discussion got heated. Miami police are saying the women got into an argument with a man at a bar, and he went to his car and shot three women, one in critical condition, two in stable condition, and police are looking for him. And we have known, even before the results of the election, that indeed, not just during the campaign, but over the past 4 years, that this has been a really emotional issue. And and for a lot of people, Dr. Cutts, this is the only thing that they can really talk about, particularly if they were on the losing side in 2020. There's got to be a better way.
Absolutely. There's absolutely a better way, and that better way is learning to manage your emotions so that they don't get to that level where you would do something violent to somebody or commit a crime. So yeah, absolutely, there's a better way, and it's not worth it, And that again, it's about knowing how you are and learning how to manage those emotions. And it would be great if everybody could do that, but obviously we see all around us that doesn't happen. We see people going and getting weapons and shooting people and having road rage and doing all kinds of things every day, unfortunately.
When do you believe that someone should consider sitting down with a Dr. Cutts in response to the kind of political stress? I mean, how do you know that the political stress that you are feeling is different from, as you said earlier, the normal kind of anxiety or stress that you may feel at any other time?
Yeah. Well, it's hard to, there's no one size fits all, so it's hard to just have a one pat answer. But the best I could say is anytime you're looking at if something is at the point where you should seek help, is usually the level of impairment that you're feeling based on whatever the stressor is, as well as the length of it, right? So, if you are so disturbed that, let's say, you're not eating well, you're not sleeping well, and you're not functioning well, then I would say that would be a time that you would want to consider getting some outside help to help you to cope. And also how long it goes on.
Let's talk about Black women for a moment. And I think you are, in a particularly strong position to discuss this. Because there are subtext to what has happened not only this week, but in the months leading up to this week. And people can say what they want about me as it relates to what I'm about to say, but I trust my non-lying eyes and my non-lying ears, and I know and I've seen and I've heard the blatant disrespect of the vice president as a Black woman. Some were dog whistles, some were megaphones. We saw that same kind of thing with Michelle Obama. And I'm talking about during this campaign as she went to support, Kamala Harris. And both Michelle Obama and Kamala Harris are women that arguably a lot of Black women identify with. Hardworking, educated, married, children, whether they are stepchildren, blended family, children that you birth, it doesn't matter. And so I think that a lot of Black women were particularly hurt by the loss if they supported Kamala Harris, because they saw that subtext about disrespect. That goes a whole lot deeper than just the politics.
I would agree, yeah. Absolutely.
So how do they deal with that? Because in some cases, and I'm not a woman, I'm a man, but I know enough of them to know that some may internalize that. Yeah,
it's called being a Black woman in America. I mean, it's not new. It's old, and that's a part of the problem, right? This level of disrespect, the combination of racism and sexism, that unique combination that Black women in this country have to deal with. How do you not let it make you despondent angry to the level where it corrodes you, stressed, sad, depressed. It's not an easy answer, right? It's not an easy fix, but we don't really have a choice, right? Do we allow somebody else's ignorance or pathology? Because I do think that, racism, especially the way it's meted out in this country, is pathological. Do we allow somebody else's pathology to make us sick, right? And I would say, no, we should not. We should avoid that at all costs, so that we don't become despondent, so that we don't become engulfed, so that we don't become disempowered. But it's a very real thing, and I think that that's why it's important for us to feel our feelings, to take some time to process, to take care of ourselves, to get out and to exercise, to do all of these good things, to engage in self-love and healthy behaviors so that we can persevere, so that we can withstand, so that we can go on, because we don't really have a choice.
I was talking to a friend of mine last night, a black woman who graduated from college with me, solidly middle class, master's degree, educator, etc. And she was telling me about the impact that the results of this election has had on longtime friends who did not support Kamala Harris, other black women. And she is still struggling to navigate how the love between them as friends is now being redefined by their political stances.
Yeah, that's very real.
How do you do that? I mean, and not only just amongst sister friends, but if you are a black woman and you've got a brother friend who, that's your ride or die, that's your boy. But he decided he couldn't vote for Kamala Harris because she was a woman.
Yep.
And then I can only imagine how that would make a black woman feel. So what if you couldn't vote for Kamala Harris because she was a woman? How is that now redefining our lifelong friendship? How do you deal with those kinds of conflicts?
Well, again, it's not a one size fits all, right? So how do you deal with it is, I would say that you have to take some time. You might have to reassess that friendship, and it might not survive. It might have to go through a rough period. You might have to have an honest conversation, come to Jesus with that person. It's not gonna get better, I think, if you don't talk about it. But if this is really your ride or die, if this is your boy or if this is your sister friend, then I think that you're probably gonna have to have a conversation, a difficult conversation, and then see, and see where you go from there. No matter what, we have to accept whatever the reality is, right? That's when we suffer, is when we don't accept what the reality is. So at the end of the day, you might choose that you're going to continue to be friends with this person. You're going to have to accept them as exactly as they are, right?
Have some people... I'm sorry, please continue. Forgive me for interrupting you. Go ahead.
Well, that's all I was going to say, is that you have to, if you're going to continue a relationship with that person, it's going to have to be where you accept that, okay, this is how they think, these are what their views are. But I would recommend, to have a conversation with that person. And I don't mean a conversation to try to convince them to change their beliefs, but if your friendship is going to survive and really stay at that deep level, you will probably have to have a difficult conversation and let them know how you feel and listen to how they feel about it.
Yeah, because even as I was listening to what you was sharing with me, and we're talking about a friendship that is 40 years old. And the differences that this election and the results have brought out that perhaps she was really not aware of. And so to me, it's not just that you're supporting the other side, but all of the things that come with supporting the other side, or all of the things that come with supporting this side. And I can only imagine, and I'm thinking in my head, maybe maybe she didn't know this friend after 40 years as well as she did. Or maybe, or maybe there are things within, that friendship or other kinds of friendships that are now being tested by this.
Oh, yeah.
That you just
absolutely happening.
Just didn't know. Yeah.
Well, but again, this is what I'm saying is that if your friendship is going to survive, then you're probably going to have a conversation about. Survive at that deep level, right? It could survive and it could become more superficial, or it can survive and stay at a deep level, but it's not going to stay at that deep level if you don't either have a difficult conversation with that person, or if you just come to some place of true acceptance and peace with the new information that you've been given.
Do you believe that one of the ways that someone can heal from the difficult feelings that they are having right now is to roll up their sleeves and do the work, as the vice president said on Tuesday, and continue to fight on? And when do you do that when so many people are emotionally exhausted?
Well, yes, I absolutely think that rolling up your sleeves and getting to work can be helpful and healing, and that I always recommend, doing what it is that you can do. But I also believe in taking care of yourself. So, the election just happened. The results are, just came in. You might need a minute. You might need a minute to take a break, to take a rest, to take care of yourself, to regroup, and then get to work. Now, that's not the same for everybody. Some people might say, no, I'm ready to get to work right now. Okay, that's good. If you can do that and be healthy about it, go ahead. But, yeah, I definitely think getting to work can be helpful, but you might need to take a minute.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I guess the other thing, too, when you talk about whether it's trying to be supportive of your friends who are feeling this, I guess I shouldn't ask you what your hourly rate is and transfer that to them, right?
If you need help, there is help available.
Yes, exactly. I'll send them your way, because I am only qualified in loving my friends, but beyond that, I can't play as a clinical psychologist on the radio. I'll leave that up to you.
Right. But on a serious note, you can be there for your friends just by having empathy and listening and offering them your experience, right? And if they're stuck, if you feel like, okay, wait, this is good, then, and I know I don't need to tell you this, then you might say, okay, this is beyond my scope, right? But I think we can definitely be there for each other. We can definitely be helpful to our friends by giving each other some grace and some empathy and some love right now.
That's right. And maybe at the Thanksgiving table, let us not discuss that. Seeley, Mr. Whoever.
Oh, yeah, right. Let's leave that where it is.
Yeah, leave it right there in the fictional drama department.
Yeah,
Dr.
Exactly.
Nicole Cutts, thank you so very much for the conversation. Always pleasant to talk to you. I appreciate your time.
Same here, Harold.
That is the Daily Drum for this Thursday, November 7th. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.
You have the capacity to do extraordinary good in the world. And so to everyone who is watching, do not despair. This is not a time to throw up our hands. This is a time to roll up our sleeves. This is a time to organize, to mobilize, and to stay engaged for the sake of freedom and justice and the future that we all know we can build together.